Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the podcast. And today I'm going to go over my review of Monday Night Raw. Starting off the night, we have CM Punk. CM Punk comes out to the ring, grabs a microphone. Punk talks about Raw debuting on Netflix. Punk talks about John Cena. Punk says that he is entering the Royal Rumble as well. Punk asks to play his music, and all of a sudden he's interrupted by Seth Rollins. Seth Rollins comes out to the ring, grabs a microphone. He mocks CM Punk. Rollins says that he'd rather be the worst version of himself than be any version of CM Punk. Rollins says that losing to Punk was one of the worst times in his wrestling career. Rollins then says he's also entering the Royal Rumble. After that, they're both interrupted by Drew McIntyre. McIntyre is standing on the stage with a microphone. Drew mocks Rollins and Punk. Drew talks about Roman Reigns. And then Drew also says that he himself will also be entering the Royal Rumble. Moving on from that, we have Chad Gable versus a surprise luchador, and that luchador is none other than the debut of Penta. Penta makes his long-awaited WWE debut. The match itself was a good match. Back and forth matchup between Chad Gable and Penta, with Gable keeping the pace of the match. Gable then hits a German suplex on Penta off the apron. Penta then and Gable both exchange in the middle of the ring, with Penta hitting a backstabber on Gable for a near fall. Penta then hits a head scissors, taking down Gable. Penta then hits a destroyer for a near fall. Gable then applies an ankle lock on Penta, but the hold is broken. But Penta hits a pup handle slam on Chad Gable, pins him for the 3, and your winner of the match is Penta. After the match, Penta was going to be interviewed, but he grabbed the microphone. He praises the fans. Penta says that this has been long overdue and that this is his new home. Penta says that he has been waiting for this for a very, very long time. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It's Ludwig Kaiser versus Sheamus. This was pretty much a grudge match between Kaiser and Sheamus. Now, the match itself, I thought it was a decent match. It was a back-and-forth matchup between Kaiser and Sheamus, with Kaiser keeping the pace of the match. Sheamus then hits a white noise on Kaiser for a near fall. Kaiser then gets up, hits a step-up enziguri on Sheamus, taking out Sheamus. Sheamus then gets up, hits a brogue kick on Ludwig Kaiser, pins for the 3, and your winner of the match is Sheamus. After the match, though, Sheamus spots Braun Breaker in the crowd, and Breaker shoves Sheamus, and the match ultimately ends. Moving on from that, we have Karrion Kross and The Miz backstage. Kross comes out of Adam Pearce's office and tells The Miz that the Wyatt Six have been moved from Raw to SmackDown. So it looks like the Wyatt Six are now a part of the SmackDown family. Moving on from that, we have Gunther. Gunther comes out to the ring, grabs a microphone. He talks about Raw on Netflix. Gunther then mocks the Monday Night Raw roster. After that, he's interrupted by Jey Uso. Uso has a microphone. Jey Uso says that it will be himself versus Gunther for the World Heavyweight title at Saturday night's main event. Gunther then mocks Jey. Gunther then says Jey is not on his level. Jey says that he has respect for Gunther, and Jey says that Gunther will respect him after the match at Saturday night's main event. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It's the finals of the Women's Intercontinental Title Tournament. It is Dakota Kai taking on Lyra Valkyria. I thought it was a good match. Back and forth matchup between Kai and Valkyria, with Valkyria keeping the pace of the match. Valkyria then hits a suplex off the apron on Dakota Kai. Looked absolutely brutal. Valkyria then hits a powerbomb on Kai for a near fall, but Kai gets up, hits a GTK on Lyra, but Lyra rolls out of the ring. Valkyria then hits a Nightwing on Dakota Kai, pins for the 3, and your winner of the match and the first ever Women's Intercontinental Champion is Lyra Valkyria. Hats off to Lyra Valkyria for getting the win in that matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. Is The Miz taking on Sami Zayn. I thought it was a decent match. Back and forth matchup between The Miz and Zayn, with Zayn keeping the pace of the match. Miz and Zayn both exchange in the middle of the ring, with Zayn hitting an exploder suplex on The Miz into the corner. Zayn then hits a haluva kick, and then Zayn hits a Blue Thunder Bomb on The Miz in the middle of the ring, pins for the 3, and your winner of the match is Sami Zayn. Hats off to Sami Zayn for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we have a Rhea Ripley segment. Rhea comes out to the ring. She talks about being the most dominant woman in the division, but she's quickly interrupted by Nia Jax. Nia Jax comes out to the ring, says that she will be winning the Women's Royal Rumble. Nia then mocks Bayley when Bayley was standing in the crowd. Nia says that she is the top draw, if you will, of the women's division. But Bayley jumps over the barricade. She's in the ring face-to-face with Nia Jax. Bayley says that San Jose is her city. But then Nia Jax quickly attacks both Bayley and Rhea Ripley. Moving on from that, we go into the main event of Monday Night Raw. It is a street fight between Damian Priest and Finn Balor. I thought it was a great match, man. It was a back-and-forth match between Priest and Balor, with Priest keeping the pace of the match. Finn, though, hits Priest with a trash can. Priest then hits Finn with a trash can of his own. Finn then hits Priest with a chair shot. Priest then hits a broken arrow off the balcony through a table in the crowd. It looked absolutely brutal. Finn then is on a stretcher. Judgment Day are here. Priest then attacks the Judgment Day. Carlito then hits backstabber on Priest. JD then hits a moonsault off the top, taking out Damian Priest. Finn then hits a coup de grace off the top rope for a near fall. The War Raiders are here. The War Raiders attack the Judgment Day. Finn then hits Priest with another chair shot. Priest then gets up, hits a choke slam on Finn for a near fall. Finn then hits a coup de grace off the apron through a table on the outside. Priest then gets up, throws Finn through the barricade. Priest then hits Razor's Edge through the table, and then Priest hits a choke slam on Finn, pins for the 3, and your winner of the match is Damian Priest. Hats off to Damian Priest for getting the win in this matchup. A couple things I want to talk about, man, when it pertains to Monday Night Raw before I get the hell up out of here. Number one, was it a decent show? Yeah, it was a decent show. I mean, to be honest, obviously, Monday Night Raw, this Monday Night Raw was not obviously going to be the same as what Raw did with their debut episode of the Raw episode on Netflix. Night 1 in LA in the Intuit Dome. It was, aesthetic-wise, it's a lot different from their first show to what it was in San Jose. But with that being said, do I think, if I'm looking at SmackDown into Raw, have they kind of hit the brakes a little bit? Yeah, a little bit. I mean, are they building towards Saturday night's main event? Yes. There's a lot of matches announced for that. Obviously, Sheamus and Braun Breaker was announced. I believe that's going to be for the Intercontinental title. And then the announcement of Drew McIntyre taking on Jey Uso taking on Gunther for the World Heavyweight title as well. Also possibly taking place at Saturday night's main event, which I believe is January 25th, if I'm not mistaken, live from San Antonio, Texas. So, obviously, there is some build leading up towards Saturday night's main event. They just had another Saturday night's main event not too long ago, which I thought was a great show. Very nostalgic for me as a fan. I'm a big nostalgia fan, so it was great to see what the Saturday night's main event looks like now compared to what it was back in the day. They had Jesse the Body Ventura there. They were paying homage to Mean Gene. So, I mean, obviously there was a lot of stuff going on in the first Saturday night's main event since when they brought it back. So, obviously there's build-up towards this next Saturday night's main event, which is taking place in San Antonio, Texas. Definitely looking forward to that. I think it's going to be January 25th, if I'm not mistaken. But with that being said, was Raw, a great show? No. I mean, like I said, man, it looks like WWE is kind of pumping the brakes a little bit, leading up towards the Royal Rumble. Hopefully there's some more build towards the Rumble, and there probably will be. WWE does a fantastic job with build up and hype towards these PLEs. But, there was a couple things I took away out of Monday Night Raw, to be honest with you. Obviously, the biggest elephant in the room was Penta. Obviously, everybody knew Penta was going to be the person that was going to be debuting and the person facing Chad Gable just from the vignettes that were played. But the other thing that solidified it for me, not already knowing that it was going to be Penta, but what really solidified it the most was that that day, on Monday before Raw went on the air, WWE was already announcing selling merch for Penta. T-shirts. They were selling Penta's mask. So I mean, it was already pretty much solidified that Penta was going to be on Raw. This Monday, and he was going to be the person taking on Chad Gable. But that being said, number one, the entrance and theme for Penta was absolutely awesome. The aesthetics were great. The gear was awesome. Obviously, the fans were really gravitated towards Penta. His in-ring work was good. Obviously, he was been on the show for a little while dealing with AEW issues. But he looked great. You know what I mean? He looked fantastic. He looks like he hasn't lost a step. But he was immensely over. The fans were really gravitated towards Penta. After the match, he cut that promo where, some wrestlers were in the back, kind of pissed off that it took too long for his promo. I mean, obviously, this guy has a lot to say, man. I mean, and there's probably a lot more shit that Penta has to say pertaining to what he had to go through with AEW. And, he might say it, he might not. But what I will say, the interesting thing was Penta seemed like he was waiting for this for a very long time to come over to WWE. And to be honest with you, he looked happy. as ever. He looked, thrilled to be there. And, it's crazy because his brother is still in, AEW lockdown pretty much, and he can't do shit. Which is sad, man. It's really pathetic from AEW, including locking Ray Phoenix down like that. But, Penta looked happy, man. And Penta, I think with the right people around Penta, I think they can really push Penta into being a main eventer. If they do it right. Obviously everybody's going to be anticipating his next match. Me personally, I thought they were going to team him up with Ray. And I mentioned that, I think last week or a week before that I thought they were going to team up and have, Penta join Rey Mysterio, I think, to take on the New Day. So clearly that I don't think that's going to, that's happening, or that has happened. And, Penta debuted against Chad Gable. So, I'm all for it, man. The people out there, and I mentioned this a couple of times too, last week and the week prior to that, there's going to be people out there that are going to be legitimately pissed off due to the fact that Penta left AEW and went over to Monday Night Raw. Because, unfortunately, there is tribalism between WWE and AEW. Obviously, people that are, full-on AEW fans, they want to keep the AEW talent that's been there in-house. And if that's what they want, then that's what they want. But I look at it from a talent standpoint. Yes, these guys are wrestlers, but these guys are also trying to make a living. And, they're trying to find the best suitable option for themselves to provide for themselves and their families. And, I think this was a great move for Penta to go over to WWE, to be honest with you. Right now with what AEW is doing, even though this is a Raw review, but it does relate to AEW in a little bit. Mainly what I'm trying to say is I think it benefits Penta immensely. And I think it's also going to benefit Ray Phoenix when he gets the hell away from AEW to go over and join his brother in WWE. And they can run roughshod on the tag team division, whether it be on Raw or if SmackDown. But at the end of the day, I think Penta did a fantastic job, and I think it was a great way how they debuted him. Like I said, the theme, the music, the aesthetics were awesome. And, I look forward to what's going to happen next with Penta, man. I think Penta is going to be a main eventer. It might not be right off the rip here, but I think it might take him a little bit of time to, kind of get his feet wet in the WWE machine. But at the end of the day, I think Penta, if they do it correctly, he can be a force to be reckoned with. And, like I said, man, he looked extremely happy to be there, and I'm happy for Penta. And I look forward for the future of what's going to happen with Penta, down the road with WWE. But, the other thing that I want to talk about too, man, is, everything else that happened with WWE, not WWE, with Raw. You had CM Punk come out to start the show. Obviously there's still some hostility there between Punk and Rollins. And then Drew McIntyre comes out. There's a lot of, and hopefully people can understand really what's going on here with Drew McIntyre and all this other shit. First and foremost, the Royal Rumble this year is going to be absolutely stacked. I mean, you got the likes of the names of Roman, John Cena, Seth Rollins, CM Punk, Drew McIntyre, pretty much all announced so far for this Royal Rumble. I believe LA Knight's a part of this Rumble as well. I mean, this Rumble is going to be absolutely insane. And the way that it's starting to stack up, man, this Rumble is going to be very, very to me, I know a lot of people are saying, oh, it's very predictable. I don't know, man. You look at somebody like John Cena, and, John Cena announced himself for the Royal Rumble. It might be too predictable for Cena to win the Rumble. But then you start adding the names like Roman Reigns, and then you start adding the names of CM Punk and Seth Rollins and Drew McIntyre. These are some heavy hitters right now, man, in WWE. And, the Rumble is going to be one of those things where who knows who's going to win this Rumble. Or who really is the odds-on favorite to win the Rumble. Because, I mean, at the end of the day, you got some heavy hitters that are going to be a part of this year's Rumble, man. It's going to be absolutely incredible this year for the Royal Rumble. But, and then the other thing is, too, is Drew McIntyre. Drew McIntyre has his sights set on everybody that was a part of the bloodline or associated themselves with Roman Reigns. And, Drew's been going after Sami Zayn. He's been going after Jey Uso. Obviously, there's Jimmy. And then there's also Cody Rhodes. But Cody Rhodes seems like he has his handfuls, right now with Kevin Owens. But this could also be something. I know some people, when I mentioned this, I think a week or two ago, this could be also something where maybe there could be a small little stable here, forming between Drew McIntyre and Kevin Owens. Due to the fact that both these guys have a lot of hatred towards the bloodline. And maybe that's going to play into, possibly them forming some kind of stable to take down the bloodline. It's definitely a possibility. And Seth Rollins might also be a wild card in all this. And I know some people say, oh, that can't happen because, Drew and Seth don't get along. But if, they all have a common goal. All three of these guys do not like the bloodline. All three of these guys do not particularly like Roman Reigns. So this could be something where, they can join forces based on the premise, on the fact that they do not like Roman Reigns. They're going to do everything they can to take down Roman Reigns and get him the hell out of WWE. The story kind of writes itself. But, I think Raw, was it a good show? Yeah, it was a good show. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, Raw was horrible. No, but do I think they're pumping the brakes a little bit? Yeah, I do. In my opinion, obviously, this Raw was not going to be the same what Raw's debut episode on Netflix was going to be. It was going to be obviously immensely different. But storyline-wise, I feel like they're kind of pumping the brakes a little bit towards the lead-up towards Royal Rumble. Obviously, like I said earlier, there's some build-up towards Saturday night's main event, and they added some matches towards that event with Breakker and Sheamus and Jey Uso taking on Gunther for the World Heavyweight title. So it looks like the card is shaping up to be a decent card once again for Saturday night's main event. And it looks like Saturday night's main event is going to be here for quite a while, because it was also announced that there will be another Saturday night's main event taking place, going head-to-head with AEW's All In that same day, that same night. So it looks like Saturday night's main event is going to be sticking around for quite a while with WWE, and it seems like it's being very beneficial for WWE to have Saturday night's main event back into the fold again for WWE. So again, that All In Saturday night's main event episode, man, those two shows running head-to-head with each other is going to be very interesting, because All In technically is AEW's WrestleMania. It's their biggest pay-per-view on the calendar year for them, and then seeing that plus Saturday night's main event going head-to-head with AEW's biggest show of the year, it's going to be very interesting to see what happens there between both those shows, because AEW is not doing so hot right now. But for as far as WWE is concerned, when it pertains to both even Raw and SmackDown, the thing of it is a lot of things are changing. Obviously, WWE is bringing in new talent, and they're having working relationships with other companies. You look at NXT even last night, for Tuesday night, and you see the fact that TNA's Women's World Champion is sitting in the crowd during an NXT event. So obviously, WWE is having these working relationships with TNA. They also have a working relationship with Pro Wrestling Noah. They sent Shinsuke Nakamura over there. Amos right now, I think, is currently the tag team champion over there. So I mean, clearly, WWE is trying to keep in these working relationships open with certain companies for the foreseeable future, which I'm all for. And I think it's smart business-wise for WWE to do that. I really do. I think, like I told you guys, I think 2025 is going to be a very interesting year for professional wrestling across the board, whether it's WWE or AEW. I mean, this could, if you're looking at, if comparing apples to oranges, this could be something that could be a very beneficial year for WWE in 2025, where you look at AEW and things are they're really not looking good for AEW, man. This could be the downfall to AEW. 2025 could be a complete disaster for AEW with, certain talents getting ready to leave and test free agency or going over to WWE. Malachi Black looks like he's on his way out, and it looks like he's going back to WWE. Ray Phoenix definitely wants to get the hell out of there and go over to WWE and join his brothers. So, I mean, Ricky Starks, he's been on the shelf. So, I mean, obviously, there's a lot of issues with AEW. And this could be a really crucial year for AEW, to be honest with you, as far as how long they're actually going to last. And, obviously, I'm going to talk more about that in depth for my Dynamite review. But, things right now are not looking good for AEW. Where you look at WWE and things are looking very, very promising for WWE across the board for both Raw and SmackDown. Raw being on Netflix, SmackDown, being on the USA Network. They're doing really good things over in SmackDown as well. So, right now, WWE as a whole are firing all cylinders. Absolutely. You know what I mean? And they're constantly and continuously making money across the board, having these PLEs. I think they're having another PLE, I believe. I forgot. I don't know exactly what PLE it is. I think it might be Backlash, if I'm not mistaken. But I know there's definitely one PLE that's possibly heading over to Mexico City, which is a big deal. Obviously the international market is a huge deal for WWE. They had Bash in Berlin in Germany, Clash at the Castle, I believe that was in Glasgow, Scotland. So they've had, I believe Backlash was also in Puerto Rico as well as France, if I'm not mistaken. And it's been very beneficial for WWE to, touch base with the international market, because it's a huge fan base as well, man. Internationally, there's a lot of fans as well that love WWE and their product that they put out, day in and day out. And, having a PLE over in Mexico City is a big, big deal. Not only for WWE, but those fans that are in Mexico City that don't really get that many events, especially PLEs, man, in Mexico City. So it's a big, big deal. It really is. And it just shows you, the projection that WWE is going. And I think it's a big deal. I really do. It's a global brand. And, what Triple H is doing right now with WWE. They're firing all cylinders, man. I mean, that Raw debut episode on Netflix did over 4 million views. I mean, that's crazy, absolutely crazy. And that's, I mean, views from all over the world, because Netflix. I mean, everybody around the world can watch Netflix, whether it's in the States or internationally. I mean, 4 million views, bro, and that show did not miss. Now, there were some things I was disappointed with, especially The Rock and what he did that night on the debut episode of Raw on Netflix, but did they fire on all cylinders? Absolutely. It was a glorified, almost PLE, but it was a Monday Night Raw episode. And they did a fantastic job with the aesthetics, the way the show looked, the celebrities in attendance. I mean, it was like a PLE, man. And they did a fantastic job with putting that together, the video packages, the opening segment with Triple H. It was great. A lot of nostalgia, showing Hulk Hogan and Andre and Hogan in the NWO. Hogan got booed. That was a whole other thing, too, about that show, that he got severely booed and he got pissed off. And it turned into a whole debacle, which I thought was absolutely hilarious. But, again, it just goes to show you that, WWE's miles ahead right now, man. They're in a league of their own. And AEW right now is behind the 8 ball. And it's showing, and it's getting bad. And the only reason why I'm bringing up AEW mainly on this, Raw, the episode today is the fact that, it all pertains to Penta. I think Tony Khan severely fucked up when it pertains to Penta. Penta's severely over night one in AEW, and his merch is already selling. He's doing great things with his merch. He's already immensely over right now in WWE. I just feel like Tony Khan dropped the ball immensely with guys like Penta and Phoenix, man. To be honest with you, those guys should have been multi-time tag team champions. Penta could have had a singles run with the TNT title, or the Continental Championship. I mean, there was other ways with Phoenix being injured or on the shelf that Penta, could have been on that on television. And Tony Khan didn't want no parts of that, which I think is bullshit. You know what I mean? And this company is starting to slowly show itself, honestly, and it's not looking good. I told you guys, when Kenny Omega returned to AEW, he did not look like he wanted to fucking be there, man. He looked like he wanted to get the hell up out of there. He did not look happy. He looked like, this place is just going downhill. And then you look at him in the match he had in New Japan, he looked happy as shit to be there. He shows up in in AEW, he's like, man, here we go again with this shit. It's a slow burn right now for AEW, man. And I told you, it's going to get to a point where they're going to have a show and it's only going to be 600 or 700 people in the attendance. And then people are going to wake up and say, holy shit, man, this is bad. This company is going to fail. That's what it's going to take, man. The hell with the ratings, because obviously, the ratings are down, but clearly nobody gives a shit. But you turn on a Dynamite episode, and you only see 400 or 500 people, 600 people in the crowd. That's fucking bad. That's real bad, man. So, and I mean, considering the fact also that you can't even sell out smaller venues because you're going to smaller venues now in 2025, that says a lot. That says a lot, because you went to smaller venues because you guys can't sell at these arenas. There's no way or no reason why you guys shouldn't be selling out these smaller venues. The reason why you're not is because your product is not worth going to see these events, because the product is absolute shit right now. Because people have no problem at all dropping money down on the line for WWE. No problem. Because it's the hottest ticket in town right now. Hands down. What WWE is doing, I mean, at this point, they can't do no wrong. Like I mentioned earlier, they're having PLEs in the international market. They're having a PLE possibly in Mexico City. You know what I mean? They had PLEs overseas, but before with Bash at Berlin. Having a Backlash in Puerto Rico, a Backlash, I believe, in France. They're touching the international market right now and allowing fans internationally to see these events live. And buying tickets to see these events, and they able to buy a ticket to sit down and watch these events. It's a huge deal for those fans internationally as well as WWE. It's beneficial on both parties, man, and it's a good and a smart business move. It really is. Their international fans are able to actually go to WWE events and not just have to go to live events where they might see their favorite wrestler once in a blue moon. No, they're going to a PLE in their country that's going to be showcased all around the world. It's a big, big deal. It's a big deal for that country. It's a big deal for WWE, and a big deal for the fans that are international fans that don't get the opportunity as much to have pay-per-views or PLEs in their country. I mean, with all intents and purposes, could you imagine having a WrestleMania in England at the O2 Arena or at Wembley? Oh my God, man! The minute that WWE announces that they're going to England for a WrestleMania, oh, you want to see a quick sellout in tickets, man? That whole WrestleMania will probably be sold out maybe 20, 30 minutes tops. Because people in England have been patiently waiting for a WrestleMania. They won a WrestleMania. I think the last event they had from WWE that was, a big time deal, if I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong on this, was, I think it was SummerSlam. And it might have been at Wembley, if I'm not mistaken, where I think it was Brett taking on British Bulldog for the Intercontinental title, if I'm not mistaken. Which was a huge event. I mean, it was a huge match between Brett and the British Bulldog. And obviously, the family connection there with, Davey Boy being the brother-in-law of Bret Hart. And it was a big, big match. And I think that's the only PLE that I think England has had since then. So, and again, I could be wrong on that, but I do remember them having a match between Bret and Davey Boy in England, and it was a big, big deal. So, like I said, imagine them having a WrestleMania in England, whether it's the O2 Arena or it's at Wembley. It's a big, big deal. You know what I mean? And for what it's worth, I know what, Tony Khan did with All In, the first ever show they did at Wembley. WrestleMania is going to surpass that, man. They're going to sell out Wembley. Sell out. There's not going to be an empty seat in the house if they have a WrestleMania in England. I can promise you that. Because people over there have been, patiently waiting for a WrestleMania in England. And I can't wait. Hopefully it does happen. Hopefully it does, because I think it's going to be insane. I think it's going to be absolutely incredible. And even this year's WrestleMania, I believe it's WrestleMania 41. It's going to be live from the Las Vegas Raiders Stadium, which is going to be absolutely incredible. And it's probably going to sell out. WrestleMania is the biggest show for WWE year in, year out. So, it's just one of those things, man, where, like, you look at both shows, and again, I have no tribalism. I want both shows to succeed and, prosper, man. I want both companies to be the top of their game. You know what I mean? And again, because the reason why is, and I told you guys, man, I was a huge WCW fan. Not saying I wasn't a fan of WWE, but I was a huge fan of WCW for many reasons. I'm a huge fan of Randy Savage, and when Randy was doing commentary for WWE, he wasn't really wrestling anymore. So, when Turner, brought in WCW and Nitro came around, and Randy went over to WCW, I was ecstatic, man, because I'm like, oh, Randy gets another shot, he gets back in the ring again, we're going to see what Randy can do. And it paid off for Randy. So, and bringing in some of those legends like Lex and Hogan and Sting and, the list goes on. Rey Mysterio made a big name for himself over in WCW. Billy Kidman. You know what I mean? And obviously WCW has its own, negative spotlight on it as well. But, we haven't had that since, what was it, 2000? When they got bought out? And WCW was beating them in the ratings. So you had two shows, man. You got the Attitude Era, then you got, Monday Night Nitro, and then you had the NWO, you had, DX. It was a big deal back then, and no one ever thought that was going to happen. And then nobody ever thought there was going to be another company, a wrestling company, coming into the fold that at one time was going to be in a conversation to possibly compete with WWE. And then here's AEW, and then AEW is on these same networks that WCW was on with TNT and TBS. So now we have that. It's almost like a nostalgia act alone with AEW going back and having wrestling back on TNT television, because we have not seen that since the WCW era. So it was a big deal. You know what I mean? And obviously, from what it's worth, the first 2-3 years of AEW, they were red hot. They were the hottest ticket in town. Everybody wanted to tune into AEW because everybody was going over to AEW. Big names like Jon Moxley, Kenny Omega was there, Adam Page, the Young Bucks. Sting was there. So it got a lot of people's attention. And now it's just, it's everybody's nightmare at this point. It's, everybody's wasteland for professional wrestling because nobody's really giving a shit about AEW, which is sad. Because I want both companies to succeed. And as a wrestling fan, at the end of the day, you would want AEW to succeed, man, because it gives you more options than just WWE to watch. Because I can tell you this right now, man, back in the day when WCW was bought out by Vince, a lot of those guys, men and women from WCW, didn't go over to WWE, man. That was the end all be all for them. That was it. Once WCW closed the doors, man, those guys, those men and women were back on the indies, or they were just done with professional wrestling as a whole. You know what I mean? And you look at AEW, yeah, there's probably going to be some AEW talents that, WWE wants, but there's going to be some talents that WWE doesn't want. And, they're going to be back on the indies or be done with wrestling. Or, maybe back in New Japan. Who knows? So, again, you want AEW to succeed, man. The tribalism of AEW, people want AEW to close down and close the doors is crazy. I never want that. But as far as WWE is concerned, yeah, I mean, they're miles ahead of what they're doing right now. I mean, that's clear as day as far as ticket sales, pay-per-view buys. I mean, it's venturing out into the international market. I mean, you can't compete with that. And honestly, for what it's worth, as a fan, you can't complain. What is it to really complain about, man? They're firing all cylinders right now. Yeah, you could probably nitpick here and there. Oh, I didn't really like this. I didn't really like that. But as far as WWE as a whole, I mean, there's really nothing that you can complain about. Yeah, the shows can be better every now and then. Sometimes the shows do, they pump the brakes a little bit, which I mentioned earlier. But they're setting up storylines, man, and storylines are compelling, leading us into these pay-per-views. And I think it's very important that they do that because it gets the fans invested. It's something that AEW desperately needs to do to get us fans invested in their product. And that's what's not happening right now for AEW. And that's ultimately, going to destroy AEW because we can't get invested in any storylines right now because there is no storylines that are captivating enough for us to be emotionally tied to want us, get us invested into watching their their weekly episodic television. There's just nothing. All it is here's some wrestling matches. Here you go. Have a nice day. Every Wednesday night, 2 hours on TBS, and there you go. That's pretty much it, man. So again, it's just one of those things where, I look at the entire narrative of professional wrestling in 2025, and I mentioned this, before. It's going to be a very interesting year for professional wrestling in 2025. It may be very, good for one company. It could be also very bad for another. And it could be very, fruitful for WWE, where, AEW, this could be one of those years that might cripple AEW to a point where there really isn't going to be a bounce back for them. Hopefully that doesn't happen. But like I said, man, 2025 is going to be one crazy year for professional wrestling. But with that being said, this is my review of Monday Night Raw. I hope you guys are out there staying safe. Be careful, and remember, stay classy.